You're listening to She Means Business, a podcast of 4 women realtors, each with unique business models, who came together to establish a supportive community. We are here to offer valuable resources and break down barriers that we face within the industry.
Welcome back to our podcast, everyone. Today we are so excited to have Jennifer Butcher with us. Jen is a loan officer with Go Mortgage, and if you're local to Minnesota, you've probably met her at a broker open, a local event, or at her wine, cheese, and reels class. This episode, we're focusing on smart financial planning for the future, and with that, we're just going to dive right in.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you. So excited to hang out with you, ladies.
Yes.
I love seeing your social media presence.
Oh, it's so good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I know, your videos are so good. I feel like I learn something new every single time. And that's why when we got together, we're like, who can we have on as a guest?
Yes.
For a podcast episode. And all of us were like, Jennifer Butcher.
Yes.
100%.
Yay.
Yes.
Yeah, I love hearing that.
Well, you can bring value to all the clients, or not all the clients, all the people that listen to our podcast, not just real estate agents. You can do it for everyone, you know.
Right.
So
Right.
And as
I
a
love
lender, a lot of lenders don't do what you do, in my opinion. You're very good on social media and talking more than just like how to get pre-approved and stuff. It's like
Talk about future planning and
Financial
investments and stuff like that.
Yes.
Like setting your kids up for the future. That's why we're like,
Right.
we could benefit from this episode too.
Yes.
Of like, okay, how can we better our kids' future?
right.
I love that. I'm all about educating and helping other people learn.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Which is awesome. So
good to hear.
Yeah, so with that, first question we want to ask is, what is the first thing someone should do when mapping out their finances for the future?
Ooh, good question. Okay, so multi-steps, but I think step 1, I'm famous for saying this if you talk to my clients, know your numbers, right? Like, I can't tell you how many people I talk to, and one of the first questions I ask them when they're going to buy a house is, what is your budget and how much is the maximum you want your monthly payment to be? And I would say 60+% of people don't know what that number is. So you have to, before you do anything, know your numbers, whether you're an Excel spreadsheet person or just write it down on paper.
Right.
But figure out, like, what are all of your fixed expenses? What are some of your fun expenses? Know what you take home and see, like, what's that difference, right? Like, how much money is left at the end of the day? And then you can kind of do step 2 and, you know, dream a little and say, okay, where do I want to be in 12 months, in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? What are my long-term goals? And then step 3 is kind of surround yourself with, like, I call it a power team. So have a financial planner, have an accountant or a CPA, have a real estate agent, have a mortgage advisor, and then maybe have like an estate attorney, so that you have people in your circle throughout your whole life that can kind of help guide you and educate you.
Yeah.
And then, you know, again, know your numbers so you know how much is left at the end of the day and what's best to do with that money to help you build the wealth that you want to get to.
Well, so with that step 1, I will say a lot of my clients at closing, you know, their eyes kind of jump out of their head of like, that's my mortgage payment, because a lot of people don't realize interest, principal, all of these other factors, your homeowner's insurance, like PMI, all of these other factors come into play with that mortgage payment. And so people get really shocked when they see that of like, oh shoot, I didn't know that it was going to be this much money. You know, I just figured $350,000 house was nothing. But it's like that mortgage payment can be significant if you aren't aware of it.
Yes.
So
I think the other shock number is when people really do the dirty work of laying out where they spend their money. Like, have you ever pulled out a credit card statement and been like, okay, let's categorize, like my bank account did it for a while. Like,
I know, it's not fun. It is
categorize
not fun.
food, fun, restaurants, and you're like, ooh, that one category. So, like, you
I had
do
too much fun.
Do the hard work, though, and look at where you're spending your money. And so people feel like they probably don't have a lot, but there's always, like, those categories that are flex.
Yes.
And then you can make money. You know what I mean? You can find ways to save more.
Totally.
It might just mean cutting a little bit.
Yeah, like a sacrifice.
Yeah. And I would say the people that I see consistently that have done the best in their life are the ones that are willing to sacrifice a little bit more on the younger side early on, right? Because you don't have the daycare and maybe some of the big expenses you run into. Save when you're younger. Don't spend. Save, because it can be such a huge jump start. To your life, really, and building that financial freedom. So,
well, that was going to kind of be like a next question, is like, what are some realistic expectations for saving and planning for the future? And I think obviously one of them is like, don't go overboard in your 20s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like I was so
you don't need every
irresponsible.
designer purse and that.
I know, and I was so irresponsible in my 20s that it just kind of set me up a little bit for failure, where I had to kind of, you know, trial and error and learn the hard way. Once we my husband and I got married, it was just like, man, we started our marriage in debt, and thankfully we figured it out, and now we're completely on the right track. But I mean, we paid for it by making those small mistakes of just poor spending habits in our 20s.
Which is why every high school should require a financial class.
know.
To graduate, right? Like, I've
Don't
been
have
preaching it
that.
for years and showing
It's like such a life skill.
sharing
Teach
the
kids about
importance
credit.
of credit.
Yes.
Yep, that's why
Debt
the
management.
The DECA programs at schools like Rogers has one, and there's our high school, Piper, did not offer that. So many high schools don't, and that DECA program like teaches you that stuff, and it even has you like working at the school, what's it called, the school store, and learning how that works and the taxes and everything, and that kind of program is.
Learning about taxes.
Yes.
So I just got my kids Greenlight cards as well, and they have it's so I can add money to the account, but then they have like they can have money in on their green card account that they can spend. I can choose specific places.
Your
they
daughter
can
called
spend
when we were
it.
having coffee, right? And she was like, "Can you add more money on my card?" And I was like, "What is that?"
That's the problem with it. They think I just add and add.
Oh my
But there's a category for saving, and they also have an investment category.
Oh, wow.
So we started talking to our kids about investments and compound interest and what that means.
That's
So I
awesome.
literally got a piece of paper out, and I'm like, this is how compound interest works. Like, you deposit $6,000 today. You earn 10% interest at the end of the year. This is how much money you have. But now next year, if you put that same amount in, this is how much money, and show them how fast it adds up.
Yes.
And by year, whatever, we were at $2.8 million, and their eyes were bugging out of their heads. And I'm like, so to teach kids and people just younger, the importance of saving and not just recklessly spending, and how much it can help you set up for a future is like
really is
huge.
so beneficial, like the younger you are.
Yes.
Because the more it'll
Absolutely.
compound.
Well,
But it's never too late.
It's never too late.
Yeah,
But even
for sure.
parents can start that. Even I mean, so Matt and I, we finally got a financial advisor 2 or 3 years ago. I think right when I started real estate, because I was like, we kind of need to know like what to do. And essentially, they had us set up these college funds, which at first I was against it because I am someone who did not go to college, and I have found success just by working really hard. And thankfully now you can just use it as like, you can cash it.
Take the tax
I don't know if it's like a IRA. Or it kind of acts as an IRA now.
Yeah.
So that I was like fine with, but now we have started putting a monthly amount into these accounts, so then when they are 18, it's like, okay, here you go.
Yes.
Here's a little bit of a bump, to
Start.
help you.
I just had that conversation with our financial advisor about getting Blake, our daughter, like starting a college fund or Roth or something for her. And so it's something like by the end of the year, like I want to do for her because it is important. It's like
Even just $25 a month. Just put something away
because I was like,
for them.
do you need a minimum? He's like, no, like just whatever you can do monthly, or he's like, you just give me a big chunk of money and that's it for the year.
And as your finances grow, like you can obviously increase that amount, which is what we've done over the last 3 years. So, it's like we started, I think, at like $25 and now we're at like $75 a month for each kid. But then like it's going to continue to keep going and going.
Right.
But even looking at those numbers, like if you start when, we all have 20/20 vision. Hindsight's 20/20, but if you start when they're a baby and you're adding just a little bit every single month, even up until like 18, and then you let that account sit. I mean, that could be their huge part of their retirement, right? But those things need to be taught early on and started.
I actually did that for my son, where I started it the day he was born, and then
so
someone
smart.
actually wrote me a check with his name on it and brought it to the hospital and was like, start him a fund. So like I just thought that's what kind of made me start it. But I even told my son, I was like, okay, one day I'm going to give you a rental property, or like if I feel like he's mature enough or doing the right things, you're going to get a rental property. And I was like, do you want one from Dad and I? And he was like, I don't know, does it cause me to do any work? I'm like, yes, you will have to do work. Or, and he was like, no, give them all to Aubrey. I'm like, what? I was like, so you don't want $250,000 just straight cash? And he's like, well, you didn't say it like that. I'm like, well, I'd hope you would hold on to it, and like, or whatever. But he's so funny like that. And one thing I did learn I was watching a reel that you put on like a month or two ago, and it said, for your kids, add them as a authorized user to your credit card. So I did that.
Oh, perfect.
Off of your reel just like a month ago. I had to tell you that, by the way.
So,
Age restriction?
So it depends on that credit card, but some don't have age restriction.
No,
so you
mine
can add
didn't.
them as an authorized user, and some you can even get if you're like a joint on it, or you can add them, and they don't have to be 18 years old.
Okay.
Benefit being they turn 18 years old. They have an 800 credit score, or a 700 plus credit score. So they can build. They've already got that built up.
Credit.
Do that. I learned
They're
that from
open
her.
to so much.
Instagram.
And here's the other
That's so
best thing
crazy.
about that is because if they want to, because if we as parents, if we want to purchase a property for them, right, and it's in our name only, we're most likely purchasing it as an investment property.
Yes.
We're requiring a lot larger down payment. But if they're 18 and they have a credit score and some income, now you can just co-sign for them. And now they're buying it as a primary residence.
That's
so,
huge.
you know what I mean? If they can do that going into college, 4 years later, they have this property that they can then turn around. It's probably been rented out that whole time, right? So they're either living rent-free because they have roommates that are paying the mortgage for them, or you're just have renters in there. They're paying the mortgage, and in 4 years, you can sell it and pay off probably a decent chunk of your student loans. You can keep it, manage it, whatever.
1031 exchange it maybe.
Yes, 100%. So it's a great way.
I love that.
To help pay for college.
Thank you for teaching me that, because he would have no credit by the time he was going to do a car
People
loan
don't think
or
about
something.
it.
No, and I didn't until I saw your reel. So
I'm gonna leave here and go do that.
I literally did it. I did it the day that you posted that, and I was
awesome.
like, okay, I'm adding them to mine, and it was like 2 seconds. I just need like social security, birthday, and that
Especially
was like
if you
that.
know that you're responsible with your credit cards, which I don't think I would have my kids on 10 years ago, but now we're good.
No, exactly. And so they even sent me a card with his name on it. Do you have to use the card that they send you, or can you accrue the credit?
No, it's an authorized user. So whatever you're doing on your card is being recorded.
That was one thing I was
don't necessarily give them the credit.
Okay, because
I don't really want to give my 5-year-old
it's in my safe. That credit card is in my safe. I am not. But I was gonna, if it did need to be used, I was gonna do some online purchases for him and then just pay him off. So that's good enough. So another question when we're talking about this is, what is a recommended size for an emergency fund, and how can I build and maintain it?
Ooh, that's awesome. So I think, and I encourage my clients to have, I think 3 to 6 months of all of your expenses. So again, we're gonna go a lot back a lot to the original budget, right? Like, know what your total expenses are every single month, and I would have 3, probably more comfortably 6 months worth of those expenses in an emergency fund. And how you build that is, how much money you have left at the end of the month, and make sure that you're putting a little bit of that at least into that account so that you have access to that money if you.
Is there like a rule of thumb, like 10% of your paycheck? Is it? Okay.
The next one was, what would you consider to be emergency too?
Yeah, I think so. How much, I think, completely depends on everybody's situation, and their expenses are different. So it's hard to say, you know what I mean, for sure how much. I think if you can 10% of your pay to set aside, that's awesome. But also just do the math and say, okay, how much are my expenses? How much do I need in that account? And how much do I have to put in there to get to that in the next few months or 6 months or whatever?
So I think if you are a homeowner, you kind of, I obviously recommend getting an inspection, but you kind of then know the age of like all your clients. It's okay. I really need to start saving for potentially a new water heater. I need to start saving for a dishwasher, furnace, because like they are not cheap. Our water heater, our pilot light stopped lighting like 2 weeks after we moved in.
And I swear something always happens.
That does always happen.
Like a day after closing.
Our
day after closing.
The Rogers home, we moved in within the first month, which we knew because it was a 25-year-old house. All of them were at their end of their life. AC, HVAC, and water heater went out in the same month. We had a home warranty, and we were just like super nice to the workers that came in. We're like, hey, like one guy was apologizing, sorry this has been taking so long, and I know you've been hot this whole summer. And we're like, oh, it's fine, we're just glad you're here. And they were like, okay, I'm gonna figure out a way to get this to you for super cheap or for free. And so we got 2 of those things for free, just for being nice to the home warranty guys.
That's awesome.
But we would be nice to them anyways without getting anything. It's just
we say this every episode, be a kind human.
Be kind to
It goes a long way.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
So what strategies do you suggest for managing and reducing debt?
Ooh, I love this one. So avalanche method. Have you guys heard of the avalanche method?
Yes.
Did you see the video on that? Okay.
I don't think so.
Is this a Dave Ramsey thing? Snowball effect?
It's
like how he gets out of debt. Okay.
Yeah. So I like it the avalanche because snowball is kind of the same thing. But I like snowball like building, right? You're building blocks, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Avalanche is like getting smaller and going down. But so the avalanche, again, look at all of your bills. Take all of your bills and make like a list or an Excel spreadsheet. I'm sorry. She's going to be a lot of numbers. know what to do, but I'm just gonna go home and get Excel up. But just write down put down all of your bills. Like, what is the balance? Mm-hmm. When is the due date? What's the minimum payment? And what's the interest rate? And rank them highest interest rate to lowest interest rate.
Smart.
So most of this is revolving debt. The couple exceptions are going to be like car loans and mortgages. Like, we'll leave those aside. But other than that, then what you want to do is set up, first, figure out when your pay date is, especially if you're in a fixed income. When is your pay date? And see if you can arrange, and some credit card companies will do this, change the due date on your accounts to right after payday. And then set up an auto payment for the minimum amounts on all of the cards except the one with the highest interest. And so you're going to be saving because you're probably paying more than that right on all of the cards. Sense. All that you're saving by paying those minimums is going to pay the first debt first. Put all of the extra toward the highest rate.
Such a good tip. I love
and then when that one's paid off, then go to the next one, and then go to the next one.
Because it might not be the highest balance, but it's the highest interest rate.
Yes, 100%. And I've had clients do this and pay off debt in like no time. They're like, because you're always trying to plug away a little bit at all of them, right? Yeah. And it's not. It doesn't feel like it goes anywhere. Right. But when you take all that extra and pay it towards that
makes
big
total
one,
sense. I don't think I've ever tried that.
Yeah, and I'll say, because of my experience 10 years ago of just trying to pay off debt and do all this credit card consolidation, they will negotiate with you, the credit card companies, if you are nice and firm. Like, you have to be firm of like, okay, I don't accept that answer. Can I please speak to your supervisor? And like, you just keep going to the next person up, and eventually they'll let you do it.
That's for disputing credit too. Like, if you have something in your credit score, like I have a couple buyers that had something on their credit score, but it was like 10 years ago. And I call them and just say, hey, it's been this long, can you please get this off my credit score now? And then you can dispute that too. It takes a little bit of time.
Yeah. A little effort.
Yep, exactly. Credit. Can we talk about credit for a second?
Oh, yeah.
That just reminds me of one thing. So a lot of people think that, like, if they have like a collection account or something, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, okay, I'm going to clean up my credit, I'm going to increase my credit score, I'm going to pay off all of these collections. It's not necessarily the best thing to do, because what happens is the minute you go pay off that collection, now it brings the date forward to that date. And so even though it's a zero balance, it actually might temporarily hurt your credit score for a while. So depending on your goals and your timeline and when you might want to buy a house, for example, it might cause you to actually have to wait longer.
Oh, wow.
So talk to your mortgage advisor.
Yes.
Let us look at a credit report, and we can kind of advise on what order to do things or how to go about it, because paying those off might not be the best thing.
That's crazy.
And there's better debt to pay off first, right? Like, aren't student loans like the last thing to pay off because they look like kind of better credit? I mean, debt.
Like, it's a good loan.
Like, it's like a better. Is that true?
Well, I think the first thing to pay is to look at your credit cards.
Yep.
Because how you're managing your revolving debt is called credit utilization. How you're managing that is a huge chunk of the pie in terms of your credit score, right? So if you have $1,000 limit on a credit card, we used to call it the 50% rule. You shouldn't charge more than 50% of what your limit is.
Yep.
Now it's like the 30% rule to maintain a good score. Yeah. And if you're trying to build a score, I say 10%. Like, if you have $1,000 credit card, we're not paying charging more than $100 in the pay cycle. So this is where a lot of people don't realize too, even if you pay that credit card off in full every single month, the credit agencies are picking up the high balance.
I did not know that.
Yes. So people say, well, I pay it off in full every month. I charge it all the way up and I pay it off in full. Well, it doesn't matter, because we're going to pull that high balance, and your score is going to reflect that. So that's a little bit of planning too. If you're going to buy
20 credit cards and just do the bare minimum.
Right. I don't know about 20, but it is a good idea to have a mix. 3-4 credit cards and that
just like pay minimums essentially.
Well, I think that, again, so if I pull a credit report and we're trying to get to a certain score, sometimes it's juggling. Sometimes someone might even have a good credit score, like a 700, but I know that a 740 is going to get them a better interest rate, and literally all they have to do is balance transfer a few things around their credit cards.
So interesting.
It's easy, and it can change your credit that fast. So, yeah.
Wow.
How long do you typically work with someone on their finances before they're ready to buy a house?
Well, I love when people
already ready.
Okay, let me preface. What would be the ideal timeline that you would have to work with a client before they want to purchase a home?
So not the clients like call and say my lease is up next month and I have to
I need to get a house. Yes.
We help those people too. I always I think at least 2 months, 2 to 3, a couple months if you know your credit, you track your credit, you have good credit, you're not worried about that. But 3 months if you think that you're out or you might have some credit work to do, then even 3 to 6 months isn't too early. Because people call me and they think they're afraid to call because they think it's too soon or they're not really. I'd rather talk to you a year in advance. I've worked with people for 2.5, 3 years before they buy a house because it just takes that long. But I'm glad they called when they did. Otherwise, they would have been that much further out, right? So it's never too early.
Yes. I was going to say my most recent client was 14 months that we worked with them just on like fixing their credit and their finances. And now, like first time home buyers, they're buying like literally their dream home. And I'm just like, not a lot of people can accomplish that.
No.
But I will say, I think average, I mean, you guys can maybe attest to this, but usually when people are like, oh, when should I start, having the conversation, like 4 months before you want to be moved in. 2 months gives you the time with the lender. And then 2 months gives you the time to find the house and negotiate and inspect and do all that. And close.
And
I mean, that's usually what I say is 4 months.
And it's never too early.
That's what
it's like, because what if you talk to a loan officer and you figure out, oh my gosh, like I need to take some steps to like fix my credit. Well, then you're not like rushing or whatever.
Or oops, I forgot to file my taxes last year.
Like I told you guys, I was working with someone since 2018. They just closed this fall. So, you know, just building up, making sure it was the right move for them and their children and everything else. And because not every time is the right time for every single person to buy.
I know. Yeah, so 100%.
It just had to be a good time. In this fall, when interest rates were high, it was the time that we could get in at the price point we wanted. And we weren't doing the multiple offers and paying 50 grand over.
Power to negotiate.
Power to negotiate. And then hopefully refinance.
Well, and if you want to dip your toes in the spring market coming up in 2024, especially with the interest rate drop prediction, start talking to a loan officer right now.
Yes.
If not 2 weeks ago.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Have all of your ducks in a row. It's the best advice I think any of us could give people because it'll be a fast market again when rates come down.
Well, I know, and they're expecting, didn't they say they're supposed to be like
6 times or something?
6 times, like they're going to drop the rates, and have you heard that?
Yeah.
So the experts are saying, I know, I never know what to believe. I never know what to believe.
So you guys, so the market's going to be all over the place, and then you add an election year to it, the wild card. I mean, we can't say but I know
it happens every election year, though.
For a while, they were saying like survive till 25. Like it was doom and gloom, and rates are going to be super high through all of next year. And now they're like, oh my gosh, they might cut rates. The Fed might cut rates at the March meeting, right? And then the market, but the thing is, the markets have already, you guys have seen the run. Rates have been better for the last few weeks and improved quite a bit. That's all on the anticipation of kind of the change up of rates are going to actually come down sooner than they think next year. So it's almost like the market always is ahead of the game, really. So I do feel it's going to be a really busy spring market. I think rates are going to come down.
It's also hard to trust the media when we just talked about this on one of our last episode with Tyler. We're like, kind of what's been the biggest setback for buyers or, the biggest challenge. And he goes, it's the media. It's the fear that the media, because every year there's been something like mortgage forbearance was 2020. COVID was 2021. What was 2022? Interest rates was 2023.
23.
Oh, maybe it was.
Housing crash.
Something. I mean, they say something every single year to not buy a house.
When houses were going back up and I bought my first rental property, they were telling me don't buy now because they've already went up, and that was 2015. But they went up another $100,000 since then. So like it just, you never can listen. It's got to be the right time for you and your financial situation. That's just never listen to the media. I don't even turn on the news.
I don't either.
So
I read an article, and I probably shouldn't quote it because I can't remember exactly where it came from, but they polled builders, and they said across the country, and if all builders built at their maximum capacity, it would take 10 years to meet buyer demand right now.
Wow, I bet.
That's 10 years. So that just shows you,
it's going to be that kind of market for a while.
What aren't they saying? There's like how many, like 5 million buyers like just on standby that are probably just going to come out and like just
that's crazy. They say like if the rates go down like what is it? 0.5% or something, it's about like 5-6 million buyers like coming into the buyer pool.
That's insane.
I just did a video and I was like, I started it out with like, don't hate me, but I actually don't want interest rates to come down. And I want them to come down, but I don't want them to come down too fast.
Drastically.
Because
Just nice.
Everybody's going to jump back in the market. And it's going to drive prices up.
That market is stressful, especially for us real estate agents and our buyers. Like, you're going to see houses and there's 30 other people in the house, and then you're going $50,000 over, and then no inspection. Like, that's not
It ruins the experience for the buyer.
Especially first timers.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not fun.
I feel really bad.
We'll see what happens,
Yeah.
So, another question for you.
Yes.
What steps should I take to plan for a comfortable retirement for myself and my family?
Ooh, good question. Again, I would map. Angela loves this, map things out. I would map things out. I would dream. Like, be a dreamer and sit down with your spouse or whoever. And what do you want that future to look like? What do you want your retirement to look like? What kind of things do you want to be doing? What price house do you think that you want to live in? How many vacations a year? And then factor in and figure out how much money that will take. We have an awesome calculator I do with people that quickly, like, we can kind of figure out, like, how much expenses it's going to take, how much money you have to have in monthly cash flow in order to achieve, kind of where they want to be at. And we can kind of quickly calculate, like, how much they have to save to be at that point in X number of years. Yeah. So it's kind of fun to play with that with people because it's, like, eye-opening. They're like, oh, I get it.
What's the calculator called? Or is that just, like, when you're...
We just have it.
Mortgage?
Yep, exactly. So I think, again, just dream, figure out where you want to be, and then... what do you have to do now to get there? Right. And the earlier that you plan, we talked about this, the earlier you start, the better. Have a diverse portfolio, have some investments, set up your retirement, set up your kids, manage your debt well, have some rental properties, in my opinion. Build a real estate portfolio. And I'm not all eggs in one basket. I think it should be diverse, but work on that now bit by bit, little bit by little bit. And, 20, 30, 40 years from now, you'll be sitting really well. Retirement wise.
Well, us too, like, being insiders, the rental property does make sense for us.
Yes.
Because it's, easier for us to manage. We can get the discounted stuff, through us. So it makes sense, for us. Not everyone, but I agree with you. Rental property is my favorite too.
We kind of touched base on a little bit of this, but a few last quick questions. So I think just people in general want to know, what's the minimum credit score you have to have in order to qualify for a house?
That's like a trick question.
I know, because I've heard 500.
Technically, FHA allows down to a 500 credit score, but you have to have a larger down payment, and every lender is going to have, at that credit score, there's going to be, additional requirements. So you can't have a late in the last 12 months. Well, most people with a 500 credit score are going to have a late in the last 12 months. So I say a 580.
They're probably not going to have like $50,000 lying around.
Right. So I say 580 is a really good starting point if you have your own funds for, like, down payment, because we can work with that credit score.
Oh, you can. 600, I didn't know you could.
Yeah. Over 600 is even better because even FHA, for example, will have, like, those loan level, they don't call them FHA loan level price adjustments, but it's like a risk factor built in, right? So you're going to take a higher interest rate because of your credit score. So if you're over a 600, that adjustment is less than if you're under. But if you need down payment assistance and you only have, we've done a ton of transactions for first-time home buyers with only $1,000 out of their pocket, but then you're looking at a minimum of $650 to $660 depending on your debt to income ratio. So mid 600s would be a goal.
Key.
Over 700 is golden.
A better interest rate for
better interest rate.
Well, what are some things people can do to increase their credit score?
Right.
Other than just
the interest credit card thing.
That's great. So obviously pay your bills on time. That seems simple, but it will mark late. People don't realize this. It will actually report late on your credit bureau 30 days late. So if you're 1 day late on your card payment, for example, it's not going to report to the credit bureaus. It's a 30-day late is when it's going to hit the credit report. So pay your bills on time. Manage your debt the best that you can. So if you do have revolving debt or credit cards, try to keep those balances and that limit ratio at or under 30%. And it goes both ways. So if that means you have to increase the limit because you just have some debt on there and you have the credit score to do it, you can increase the limit. It does the same thing for your credit score. Or maybe get another card or something like that to transfer some balances just to even it out across the board a little bit.
Because that was one thing we did so much is we did a lot of that like 0% balance transfer because it's like 0% for 12 to 18 months. And I mean, that helped us so much because you don't realize how much you drowned with a 20% interest rate on a credit card. And that's the standard now. 19.99 is like the standard interest rate, which is just ridiculous.
That's
And that's how these credit card companies are making their money.
That's why we need to quit our jobs.
They're thriving off people being thriving off people being in debt, if I'm being honest, which is kind of sick and twisted. But at the same time, it's also helping a lot of people get the things they need now that they might not be able to afford.
And if you're absolutely swimming in debt and you can't stay above water, talk to somebody. Talk to a financial advisor, talk to a mortgage advisor, talk to somebody that can help you figure out either an avalanche method and are you able to pay this down, or maybe you need to talk to an attorney and look at some other options. The unfortunate thing is sometimes people are they're just in denial and they're scared and they don't know what to do, and then there's like lates after lates after lates, and unfortunately only time can heal a late payment on a credit card. There's no fast fix even once you get the debt paid. So I'm not encouraging people to do a bankruptcy or something like that, but sometimes you need a third party to come in and do a reality check too, like, okay, what can we do in this situation? So,
well, when you are drowning in debt, it's hard seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of like, okay, I am making this much. Where do I even throw it? Where do I even start? Oh my gosh, I'm making like the smallest little like, whatever. And it just sometimes feels like, okay, I'm not getting anywhere with this. I give up.
And scared people too, they can come to people like you that work with financial stuff and say, hey, or like they may be scared, but you've heard it all and seen it all. And so all the financial people, so just go get help. No one's going to judge you. They'll help you, just
don't be embarrassed. It's just take control.
I have a question for you about rental investors. So how do you go about owning your first rental property?
Well, I love house hacking personally. So in fact, we just closed a few months ago. I have clients who purchased their first property ever was a fourplex. So I love multi-units. If you know you want to get into investments, and I actually even ask first-time home buyers, like, what are your longer-term goals, and are you interested in rental property? You know what I mean? Just to get a long-term goal.
I always ask them to do duplex or
and if you are, or you're in the point in your life where you can own a multi-unit, so live in a multi-unit property, even if it's just a duplex. Then you can buy it. The benefit to that is you can buy it with a minimum down payment, right? 3 to 3.5%, depending on the financing program. And then you can get rent on the other side that contributes towards your mortgage payment. So you're living with a lower monthly payment, saving more money, putting it to pay off debt or in other investments and whatnot. And then you only have to live there for a year. And then you can do it again. So then you can keep that property, rent those 2 units out. And so like these guys bought a fourplex. They lived there for a year, about a year and a half. And now they each went out and bought a duplex that they're living in.
Wow.
So minimum down they saved. And now, so they have basically,
That's awesome.
8 units between the two of them.
I know.
Every time Ben and I get together with a buyer, we're like, hey, what are your goals? Like, do you ever want to do, because literally 50% of the people I talk to are like, I want to do real estate investing somehow, one day. And I'm like, well, this is what we would tell you to like maybe do like for your first one, like don't spend that high price that you wanted the first time, or like unless you're doing that multifamily,
right?
Or if it depends on their financial situation, but we always try to kind of gear them towards making it a rental. We even get people selling like a townhome. So they'll be like, hey, we want to sell this townhome, and I'm like, have you ever thought of making that a rental at the price and the interest rate it's at? Like, and they're like, yeah, but I never even knew where to start. And then we'll tell them, and we could be selling their house and making money, but instead I'd rather have their future be better, so
we still own our first property. First property was townhome. We still own it to this day. It's a rental. The other thing too, for people that maybe aren't younger or starting out, or you already own a property, people have more equity in their homes right now than ever.
Ever
so
before.
Home equity lines of credit. I did a video on that. I talked to a title partner the other day. They're processing 25 this is just one company in Minnesota. 25 applications a day for HELOCs.
Oh my gosh.
A day.
That's
for
nice.
HELOCs right now.
Wow.
So home equity lines of credit are a great option.
Because anybody that bought a refinance in 2020.
You have
just give me the equity.
You can leave the low interest rate on your first mortgage, but tap into that equity through a home equity line of credit. You can use that for a down payment on a rental property, a second home, cabin, or something like that. Debt consolidation, home renovation, build more equity in your home. Like, it's a huge, it's a really underutilized tool that people have access to right now that they forget.
For sure.
Oh my gosh, so much good information, Jennifer.
So
thank you.
Informative. I love it.
I know, same. And I feel like anybody can listen to this, not just real estate professionals.
Yeah,
so this was like such a good like all around episode.
We're all gonna go home and do budget.
Yeah,
Excel spreadsheets.
Which is like my favorite thing to do.
See me, I'm like,
Piper loves it.
I do. I love being like organized, especially with.
I just try to make more so I don't have to look at it.
My husband's probably like, yeah, right. Why aren't you organized with our budget? I was like, well, I like Amazon too much.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I don't want to know.
So we always end every episode with a fun little game we like to call Date, Marry, Kill. Not sure if you're familiar with it.
No, I'm not.
Real estate version.
Okay.
Yes, real estate version. So it's like Date, Marry, Kill, but like, you know, it's not like Ryan Reynolds, Jeremy Renner, and Hugh Jackman. You know what I mean? So we're not going to offend your husband here.
Okay.
No, so Date, Marry, Kill. We have flipping a house, single unit rental, or multi-unit rental. What would you date? What would you marry? What would you kill?
Oh. Okay, so I would... Can I go backwards? I would marry a multi-unit.
I know, I was going to say, you said it earlier. I was like, she's going to marry?
We own a lot of doors, so I'm a huge multi-unit. So multi-unit I would marry. What were my other options? Oh, I would date...
Flip or single unit?
Okay, I would date a single unit.
Okay.
And I would kill a flip. Only because it has taken us almost 2 years to finish our basement. I can't make decisions. You guys, I cannot... I should take that back. My husband can't make decisions.
However, it's your house, though.
Yeah, it's my house.
Yes.
I know. If it was a flip, I would love to take on a project of a flip and, you know, have fun with it. But it's not a huge part of my expertise. So that would be my order.
Okay, Angie, what about you?
I'd for sure marry, just like you, the multi-unit, because I want as many households under one roof and, you know, make more cash flow and more properties, and then 1031 exchange that one day.
Yes.
I would date the single unit rental, especially for first-time investors, because it's easy to afford, and eventually you keep it for time. Like, I have my first one from 2015 too.
Yeah.
And now I can 1031 exchange into a duplex, a multi-unit, and not pay taxes on that.
Yes.
And then I would kill a flip. And the only reason I'd kill it right now is because if it was 2009, 10, 11, I would probably date a flip because they were making a lot more money back then flipping.
Yes.
It's harder now, I feel like.
Yeah.
With
There's
the high
no
interest rates
there's no foreclosures right now.
Yes.
Like barely any foreclosures. I'm like, if you're an insider and you're like calling people saying, hey, you know, and they're willing to sell your house to you for really cheap, then maybe you'll make money. But right now some people are making money doing it. I'm not saying they aren't, but it's more risky than just the rental property biz, I feel like.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, me? Okay. Wow, you guys, I'm so opposite of you. I would kill that multi-unit like so fast, burn it to the ground. The thought of trying to like gather rent from so many tenants gives me anxiety of like, I need reliable.
Just send me there on that.
We need to talk commercial then.
Yeah. Okay, fine. I would date the single unit rental. I just don't know if I'm like a big rental person.
It's not for everyone.
I always need a creative outlet. I feel like I've used Instagram as that. I feel like I've used just my own house as that. And so a flip house for me would be like a fun creative outlet for me of being able to like tap into different design trends and do something different each time. And granted, it is a riskier purchase, especially right now when there not being foreclosures and better deals. However, I don't know. That's just how I feel. I like my story and I'm sticking to it.
You rehabbed your kitchen and, you know, so that makes sense.
I mean, I didn't rehab it. Rashad did. Yes. However, I did design it, you know, with like picking everything out. And granted, there's some things that I would change about it now, but it was...
I changed my house I just built last year. I changed half of it.
Well, that's what we were talking about. We're like, I want to build a house. Like, I want to build our next house for sure. But then I'm like, I feel like I'm going to build it and then immediately say, oh, I should have done this differently.
That always
and she goes,
no matter what.
It's going to happen no matter what.
And
you can build your dream home.
Ways you can, like,
I try to turn it around too and be like, what do I really love about this home? Why did I pick it?
Yeah.
Because then I always feel better.
Because then you always see like the next best thing. Okay, well now I want to.
Well, right.
Now I want to.
Exactly.
Now I want
There's
a
always
second
gonna be
kitchen
something
behind
better.
my kitchen. You know what I mean? Like you walk through the artisan home tour and you're like, okay, well now I need a TV that comes out of the table.
Yes.
You know,
Oh my goodness. Ben, you need 6 jobs.
It's so bad. So, all right, Erica, you're last.
So I will kill the flip, which I don't know. It just seems like too much work, and I'm not handy.
You guys are so mean to the flip houses.
I like
kill my
idea,
dream
but,
without the flip.
I would just rather not. Single unit, I'm just going to say I'd marry single unit rental because that just seems more attainable to me.
I agree.
Part of
I
life
think
right
more
now.
attainable
And
than the multi-unit.
yes, and where we are in our life with like a kid, I'm like, I could never live in a multi-unit rental with my family and then whatever.
Yeah, try to navigate all the tenants.
Yes,
Yeah.
that just seems like a lot.
Yeah.
And then I
You
would
guys are
date
all-
multi-unit. So maybe in the long run.
Yeah.
Or like if I could
Long-term
start
goals.
over, it would be awesome to like, pre-kid to have
Yeah.
do that.
I mean, sometimes dating turns into marriage, so you never know.
Sometimes marriage turns into killing. You never know. I'm just kidding. Well, thank you. I always got to make it awkward. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yes,
Oh,
Jennifer.
this was so fun.
It was so much fun.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
I know, thank you. We got a couple more episodes coming up, and then we're going to wrap up season 1. I mean, I can't believe that we've kind of already approached the end
fast.
here.
Yeah.
But anyway, stay tuned, guys. Appreciate you listening.
We want to express our gratitude to all of you who have supported us and continue to tune in. Without you, this podcast wouldn't be possible. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes coming your way. Until then, remember to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep listening to She Means Business.